Let me tell you something that no one else is willing to say. Lies don't just break trust, they break people. They shatter confidence. They destroy relationships. And yet, we treat them like they're harmless little shortcuts. But here's the truth. Every lie has a price, and eventually you will pay for it. Point one, lies promise freedom, but bring chains. See, the first time you tell a lie, it feels like an escape, a way out. You think this will make things easier, and for a moment, it does. But then reality hits. You have to remember that lie. You have to cover it up. And before you know it, you're tangled in a web of your own making. Lies don't set you free, they enslave you. The first lie is never the last. Nobody ever tells just one lie, because one lie demands another and another, until eventually the real you gets buried under a version of yourself that doesn't even exist. You're no longer living, you're performing. Point three, lying corrupts confidence. You see, every time you lie, you chip away at something inside you. You stop trusting yourself. You start second guessing. And the worst part, the people around you stop trusting you too. Trust isn't built on words, it's built on consistency. And once people doubt your honesty, even the truth won't sound convincing anymore. Point four, truth hurts, but lies destroy. Look, I won't sugarcoat it. Truth is tough. Sometimes it hurts. Sometimes it costs you, but lies, they cost more. They might feel good in the moment, but they leave scars that don't heal easily. You think you're protecting yourself, but in reality, you're tearing yourself apart from the inside. Point four, honesty requires strength. It takes courage to stand in truth when lying seems so much easier. But listen to me, easy isn't always right. The strongest people are not those who never make mistakes, but those who take responsibility for them. Owning the truth is powerful. It's what builds real character. Point seven, and truth sets you free. At the end of the day, the truth does one thing that a lie never can. It sets you free. Free from worry, free from guilt, free from the fear of being exposed. When you live in truth, you don't have to remember what you said last time. You don't have to cover your tracks. You don't have to pretend. You get to be authentically, unapologetically, and powerfully you. So, here's my challenge to you. Choose truth over comfort. Choose integrity over shortcuts. Choose to be real, even when it's hard. Because when you do, you won't just earn trust, you'll earn peace. And that is worth more than any lie could ever give you. Are you ready to walk in truth? The choice is yours. Lies have a way of making us believe they are the easiest escape route from discomfort. When we find ourselves in a difficult situation, whether it's a mistake we made, a consequence we don't want to face, or a truth we're too afraid to admit, lying seems like the quickest way out. We tell ourselves, it's just a little lie, no harm done. In that moment, it feels like a solution, like we're slipping away from trouble. But the truth is, what we think is an escape is actually a trap. Lies don't set us free, they lock us in chains. The moment a lie leaves your mouth, it owns you. You don't own it anymore, it owns you. It sits in the back of your mind, demanding that you remember the exact words you used, the exact details you created. And every time you speak to someone who might uncover the truth, you have to double check your words, measure your tone, be careful not to slip. That's not freedom, that's bondage. That's carrying a weight you were never meant to bear. What makes this even worse is that one lie is never enough. Because once you tell one, you have to tell another to keep the first one alive. And then another. Until, before you even realize it, you've built a false reality that you have to maintain constantly. The walls start closing in, and the freedom that the lie promised turns into stress, anxiety, and fear. You start living in survival mode, always looking over your shoulder, always wondering when the truth will catch up to you. Because make no mistake, the truth always catches up. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but sooner or later, the lie will come crashing down, and the damage it does will be far greater than whatever you were trying to avoid in the first place. And here's the thing, lies don't just trap you externally by complicating your relationships and circumstances. They also imprison you internally. Every time you lie, you chip away at your own integrity. You start losing confidence in yourself. Deep down, you know you're not being true to who you are. You begin to wonder if people like the real you or just the version you've presented. And that kind of doubt eats away at your soul. So what's the alternative? Truth, even when it's hard, even when it costs you, even when it exposes your flaws. Because truth, no matter how difficult, brings real freedom. When you tell the truth, you don't have to remember what you said last time. You don't have to live in fear of being found out. You don't have to perform or pretend. You just get to be real. And that kind of freedom, that's priceless. That's peace. And that's something no lie could ever give you. No one ever tells just one lie. It's never as simple as that. The moment you speak one falsehood, you create a ripple effect, one that demands more lies to sustain it. At first, it seems harmless, a small cover-up, a tiny exaggeration, a little bending of the truth. But soon you realize that in order to keep your original lie intact, you have to tell another one, and then another. Before long, what started as a single falsehood has multiplied into a web of deception, one that requires constant maintenance, constant remembering, constant effort to keep from unraveling. Lies are never satisfied with just existing. They grow, they evolve, they demand your attention and energy. What starts as a tiny, insignificant falsehood soon becomes a tangled mess that you can't control. You find yourself correcting details, adjusting stories, making sure everything lines up so that no one catches on. And the worst part, you can't even relax. You become paranoid, constantly on edge, worried that someone will notice the inconsistencies, that someone will ask the wrong question, that the truth will slip out when you least expect it. The weight of living a lie is exhausting. It drains you emotionally, mentally, and even physically. You start living in fear, not just of others finding out, but of yourself slipping up. You start doubting your own memory, your own words, your own ability to keep everything straight. And the more you try to fix one lie, the more tangled things become. One falsehood leads to another until you can't even remember what's real anymore. And it doesn't just affect you. Lies have a way of infecting relationships too. When you lie to one person, you have to be careful around everyone else who knows them. You have to make sure your stories match, that no one catches the discrepancies. But people aren't stupid. Over time, they start noticing. They see the inconsistencies, the hesitation in your voice, the way your story shifts slightly every time you tell it. And once that happens, trust erodes, because people may not know exactly what the lie is, but they can sense when something isn't right. And once someone starts doubting you, it's nearly impossible to regain their full trust. The scariest part, lying becomes a habit. The more you do it, the easier it gets. It starts as a way to get out of trouble, to avoid discomfort, to protect yourself. But eventually, it becomes your default. Instead of facing problems head on, you instinctively reach for another lie. It stops feeling wrong. It becomes second nature. And when lying becomes normal, truth starts feeling foreign. That's why one lie is never the last. Because every lie you tell makes the next one easier. Every time you choose deception over honesty, you make it harder to stop. And before you know it, you're not just someone who told a lie, you've become a liar. Lying doesn't just affect how others see you, it changes how you see yourself. Every time you tell a lie, even a small one, something inside you shifts. At first it seems harmless. You think it's just words, just a way to avoid trouble or make things smoother. But over time, those lies chip away at your confidence. Because deep down, you know you're not being completely honest. You know you're presenting a version of yourself that isn't entirely real. And the more you do it, the more disconnected you become from who you truly are. When you lie, you create doubt within yourself. At first, it's about whether or not people believe you. But soon it turns into something bigger. You start wondering if you believe you. You begin to second guess your own words, your own choices, your own identity. You tell yourself that you're in control, that you can keep track of what you've said and to whom. But deep down, a part of you starts to wonder, what if I slip up? What if they find out? What if I'm not as convincing as I think I am? Lying breeds insecurity. It puts you in a constant state of performance where you're always measuring your words, always making sure your story adds up. And over time, that performance mindset doesn't just apply to the lies, it affects your entire self-worth. You start basing your confidence on your ability to maintain a false image rather than on who you actually are. And the danger in that, when your confidence is built on lies, it's fragile. One crack, one inconsistency, one exposed truth, and the whole thing comes crashing down. And then there's the way lies affect the trust people have in you. Trust isn't something you can demand, it's something you earn through consistency. People don't trust words, they trust patterns. They trust the way you show up, the way you handle difficult situations, the way you respond when honesty is hard. When people start noticing dishonesty, even in small ways, they hesitate. They might not call you out directly, but they'll start questioning. They'll wonder if they can rely on you. They'll hesitate before believing what you say. And that hesitation is where confidence gets shattered. Because when people don't trust you, you start struggling to trust yourself. And the worst part, the more you lie, the harder it becomes to face the truth. You avoid certain conversations. You dodge difficult moments. You start feeling like you have to protect the false version of yourself instead of being honest about where you are. That kind of pressure is exhausting. It keeps you stuck. It keeps you small. It keeps you from growing into the person you were meant to be. Real confidence comes from knowing you're living in truth. It comes from being able to stand by your words without fear of them coming back to haunt you. It comes from integrity. Because at the end of the day, nothing will damage your confidence more than living in a way that forces you to question yourself. The truth isn't always easy to hear. Sometimes it stings. It can make you uncomfortable, expose your mistakes, or force you to confront something you'd rather avoid. That's why so many people choose to lie instead. It feels like the easier option, a quick fix to avoid pain. But while truth may hurt in the moment, lies are far more destructive in the long run. The damage caused by deception doesn't just fade away, it grows, spreads, and eventually crumbles everything around you. Lies create temporary relief, but that relief is an illusion. At first, it seems like everything is fine. You dodged the hard conversation, avoided disappointing someone, or escaped the immediate consequences of your actions. But what happens next? The lie lingers. It doesn't disappear just because it helped you in the moment. Instead, it sits there waiting to be uncovered, waiting to come back stronger. And the longer it stays hidden, the more damage it causes when the truth finally comes out. The problem with lies is that they demand more than you expect. One small deception may not seem like much, but to keep it alive, you have to add more. More excuses, more cover-ups, more justifications. Before you know it, something that started as a tiny detail has turned into a major issue. And by the time the truth is exposed, it's not just about the original mistake anymore. It's about the trust that was lost, the relationships that were broken, and the integrity that was compromised. And this destruction isn't just external. Lies do something even worse internally. They make you numb to the truth. The more you lie, the more normal it feels. You start believing your own falsehoods, convincing yourself that bending the truth isn't a big deal. But deep down, your mind knows the difference. That inner conflict builds up, leading to anxiety, stress, and self-doubt. You're constantly carrying the weight of the lies you've told, even if you don't realize it. And that weight only gets heavier over time. And this destruction isn't just external. Lies do something even worse internally. They make you numb to the truth. The more you lie, the more normal it feels. You start believing your own falsehoods, convincing yourself that bending the truth isn't a big deal. But deep down, your mind knows the difference. That inner conflict builds up, leading to anxiety, stress, and self-doubt. You're constantly carrying the weight of the lies you've told, even if you don't realize it. And that weight only gets heavier over time. Truth, no matter how difficult, has the power to set you free. It clears the air. It might be painful in the moment, but it brings healing. It allows people to rebuild trust, to find solutions, and to move forward without the burden of deception. Lies, on the other hand, create distance. They separate you from others, from reality, and from yourself. When faced with the choice between truth and lies, remember this: pain from the truth is temporary, but destruction from lies lasts much longer. The truth may require courage. It may come with consequences, but in the end, it is always the better path. Because when the dust settles, it's not just about what you said, it's about the person you became in the process. And no lie is worth losing yourself over. Telling the truth isn't always easy. In fact, sometimes it's the hardest thing you can do. When you're faced with a situation where lying seems like the safer option, it takes real strength to choose honesty instead. It's easy to take the path of least resistance, to say what people want to hear, to bend the truth just enough to avoid consequences. But real character is built in the moments when you decide to stand firm in honesty, even when it's uncomfortable, even when it costs you something, even when it exposes your flaws. The reason honesty requires strength is because truth is often inconvenient. It forces you to take responsibility for your actions. It demands that you face the reality of your choices instead of hiding behind a false narrative. And that's not always pleasant. Owning up to mistakes can feel embarrassing. Admitting when you're wrong can feel humbling. Being honest when you know it might disappoint someone can feel like the harder road. But the truth, no matter how difficult, is always the foundation of trust, respect, and personal integrity. People who lie do so because they think it will make life easier. They assume that avoiding the truth will protect their reputation, prevent conflict, or keep them in control. But in reality, lying takes away your power. It makes you weak because it forces you into a cycle of deception where you constantly have to keep track of what you said and to whom. Every lie you tell puts you in a position where you're not standing on a solid ground. You're balancing on a shaky foundation that could crumble at any moment. And when it does, the consequences are far greater than whatever discomfort telling the truth would have brought. Strength isn't about avoiding consequences. It's about facing them head on. It's about having the courage to be real even when being fake seems easier. When you tell the truth, you build inner resilience. You train yourself to handle difficult situations with maturity instead of manipulation. You develop the ability to accept responsibility rather than shift blame. And over time, this honesty creates confidence because you know you don't have to hide anything. You don't have to carry the weight of deception. You don't have to live in fear of being exposed. You can move forward with a clear mind and a clean conscience. The strongest people in the world are not the ones who never make mistakes. They are the ones who take ownership of them. They understand that honesty, even when it's painful, is what ultimately builds respect and credibility. They know that truth may cost them in the short term, but it rewards them in the long run. Strength is found in standing for what is right, even when it's difficult. And nothing requires more strength than choosing integrity in a world that often encourages shortcuts. Lies may feel like they offer protection, but in reality, they build walls that isolate you. When you choose deception over honesty, you create distance between yourself and others, even if you don't notice it at first. Every lie, no matter how small, plants a seed of doubt in your relationship. The people around you may not catch it immediately, but over time, they begin to sense the inconsistencies. They notice when things don't quite add up, when your words don't match your actions, when something feels off. And once that doubt takes root, trust begins to wither. Trust isn't built overnight, and it certainly isn't rebuilt overnight once it's broken. A single lie can undo years of credibility. People want to believe in you, but they also want to feel secure in their relationships. When they realize they can't take your words at face value, they start questioning everything. Even when you tell the truth, they hesitate. They wonder if there's more to the story. They hold back from fully relying on you, and that hesitation creates a gap that no amount of explanations can fully erase. Lies don't just damage how others see you, they also affect how you connect with them. When you lie, you are forced to keep up appearances. You become more focused on maintaining an illusion than on genuinely engaging with the people around you. Instead of building relationships on honesty and vulnerability, you build them on performance and pretense. And the deeper you go into deception, the more isolated you become. You can be surrounded by people and still feel alone because deep down, you know they don't really know you. They only know the version of you that you've presented. Authenticity is the foundation of real connection. When you are honest, even when it's difficult, you give people the chance to know the real you. You allow them to see your struggles, your flaws, your humanity. And in doing so, you create relationships that are built on something solid, something that can withstand challenges, misunderstandings, and even mistakes. But when you choose dishonesty, you rob yourself of that opportunity. You push people away without realizing it. You create an emotional distance that becomes harder to close the longer the lie exists. The most meaningful relationships, whether in friendships, family, or business, are built on trust. Without it, there is no real foundation. You might be able to maintain the appearance of closeness for a while, but eventually cracks will show. And when they do, the collapse is inevitable. Lies may give the illusion of security in the moment, but they always come at the cost of true connection. If you want relationships that last, that bring joy, that offer real support, honesty isn't just an option, it's a necessity. Because at the end of the day, no matter how carefully a lie is crafted, nothing will ever be stronger than the truth. Lies promise escape, but they only lead to entrapment. They start small but grow uncontrollably, forcing you into a cycle of deception that erodes your confidence, weakens your character, and isolates you from the people who matter most. Every lie demands another, creating a tangled web that becomes harder to navigate until it inevitably collapses, bringing greater pain and destruction than the truth ever could. Honesty, on the other hand, requires courage. It forces you to face discomfort, admit mistakes, and accept responsibility. But in that courage, you find real freedom, the kind that doesn't require constant upkeep, that doesn't leave you living in fear of exposure. Truth builds trust, strengthens your confidence, and fosters meaningful relationships that aren't based on performance, but on authenticity. The choice between truth and lies is ultimately a choice between temporary comfort and lasting integrity. Lies may offer momentary relief, but they steal your peace in the long run. Truth may be difficult at times, but it lays the foundation for a life of strength, respect, and genuine connection. And in the end, no lie is worth the price of losing yourself. Choose truth, choose freedom, choose the person you were meant to be.